Hello, I wanted to share with you the process of treating your edges with a faux gilding. The reason why I started doing this was because of my antiquarian Lenormand deck. The first printing was printed on a wax ink, and it chipped really easily. And I know that a lot of self-publishers have this issue when they use a black border. So I tested out a couple different methods, and the method I ended up using was just a permanent marker. It's Avery Marks-A-Lot, and the reason why I use this specific marker, which is also available in the medium size, this is the jumbo size, but the reason why I choose this is because it's non-toxic. It has a very, very low odor, and it's also non-fading. So it's a really great marker to use for your decks. And so I highly recommend using this on decks that have a black border on the front and on the back. And so the way I do this is one card at a time, and it's really important that you with any ink that you use, that you do one at a time, because if you try to color all at once, what happens is you get bleed through between the cards, and it just becomes really messy. So it takes about 10 to 15 minutes to do the whole deck. And so what I will do is just kind of breathe and relax and just do one at a time. And the jumbo and the medium-sized marker that's by Avery has this chisel tip on it, and it's really hard to make a mistake because you can just kind of take a perpendicular direction, I guess you can say, with it. So it's very, very easy to go through each card. I'm going really slow here, but once you get used to it, it becomes a pretty quick process. And yep, sometimes you do get it on your fingers. And so I just do it one at a time. I'm going to go around my tripod here, just like this. So I wanted to show you the different methods. And so I prefer the chisel tip. You can use Sharpie, but it just, it smells funny to me, and it does tend to fade more easily, I noticed. And so that's just my preference. I don't work for them or anything, but that's just what I found that works. You can use the markers that have the tip like this, but if you're afraid of making a mistake, I'd stay away from this because it might be really easy to kind of mark your card if you feel clumsy. So I'm going to show you how some other decks that I used for with the Marks-A-Lot. So I used my Marielle Tarot. Using the same method, and obviously this will take a little longer. Takes about 15 to 20 minutes, but it just looks really elegant and beautiful that way. I get a lot of compliments when I do readings for people using this deck. I used the same Avery Marks-A-Lot on the Lo Scarabeo Visconti Sforza. Again, there's the black border on the front and the back. You really have to have the border or else it will show up. If you have like a black border on one side and maybe it's borderless on the other side, you'll see the black. I don't know if you can tell in this light. You can see the ink, but it's camouflage since it's black here. So the other way that I edge treat is by using Tim Holtz's Distress ink. This is these are water-based dyes, and I have kind of a collection here that I've gathered over the years from my crafting, but the one I use the most is Antique Linen, which is sort of a beigey off, a kind of yellowy, more on the yellow side. And I've used this one quite often, and I've also used the Distress markers. That's by Tim Holtz, and this is Antique Linen as well. But the ink pad is pretty nice to use, and that's what I used on the Flans Victorian, and this is what spawned me to do a video, because there's some people who are asking about how I did this, and really I was inspired by some folks over in the Eclectic Tarot forum. There was a few years ago a kind of a creative spurt of ideas for faux gilding, and most of those folks were using metallic pins, I believe, or markers. It was some, I can't remember, but that's what gave me the idea to do my antiquarian Lenormand. And so as I started collecting kind of the more recent vintage decks, I tried using, I had the Antique Linen, and I tried using that, and I think the first one I did that on was the Deck of the Bastard when I got this last year. And so you can see I did a light coat, and so and of course I used Antique Linen, and the way I did that, again, one card at a time, because since it's water-based, it's very inky. These ink pads are, that you can pick up a lot of ink, and so all I do is just, you can do it like that, or like this. I hope this is in focus. Yes. And you can go through again if you want like a darker edge. And one thing I want to tell you is when you go through your whole deck, it's going to feel a little damp, kind of sticky, maybe more damp than sticky. And so you want to give it about an hour or so to completely dry. And so I did this, so I just got this deck on Saturday, and so I colored it Sunday for the Flans. So, and that color worked out really well with the color of the deck, Antique Linen. So let's see. I also, Antique Linen, I used that color on the Ancient Italian Tarot, and that was a really good color for this one as well. So I believe for 7 Stars Vintage German Lenormand, I think I used the old paper, which is a little more green. These two Antique linen or old paper would probably work for the flans. I would say antique linen's a perfect match, but the old paper is a little more on the green side of things, and antique linen's more on the yellow side. So there's that. I used peeled paint for the Lo Scarabeo Lenormand Oracle, which is actually the same images from 7 Stars vintage Lenormand. And so the peeled paint worked really well after I trimmed the border, since the back is green and the front is kind of a brownish olive color, but it worked. So it's just a faux gilding there on these. Oh, I used the antique linen on the Gluck, and that worked great, even though the back is blue and the front has an antique linen color. Just makes the deck feel like it's been handled for a lot longer than a couple years on that one. You can also use other colors. If your borders are black, you can use, this is the vintage brown. That's this one, vintage brown, and even though the black border, I tried the brown to kind of go with the brown back for that. So, oh, and I used it on the Robledo TDM. Oh, I just love this deck and the cardstock on this deck. So this deck, this is a 3rd edition, I believe, and he made it look more hand touched. And so when I got the deck, of course, it had white edges. And so this one, it was the antique linen. And the great thing is they're acid free too. So something just to kind of tell you about the antique linen is, like I said, they're water based. So if you have a deck that you want to use that's pretty papery, the cardstock on the Robledo is a little more on the papery side, and I noticed that it was fine using the ink pad, but I wondered if it was a little more papery, that it might maybe damage the edges, soften them a little too much, but it worked out really well with this. So again, it looks dirty from use, but it's actually that antique linen. So let's see, I showed you those. And this is just my little mini that I did in black. Oh, I used black soot just to try that. And so black soot's the black distress ink. And it's, see how it fades more? Since it's water-based, your sweat, when you're using the deck, the sweat just kind of, or you're just handling it, your oils kind of rub the ink off a little more easily than the Avery Marks-A-Lot. So, I don't really use that deck very often. I love it, so pretty, the Visconti Sforza. But, so that might be why it looks a little more on the nicer side as far as the edge treatment lasting. So, yeah, really, really easy. With the, just really quick, with the, when you're using these ink pads, again, I would, you get a lot of, you get a lot more ink coming off the pad, and so sometimes you get just a touch of bleed, and so it's really easy to just kind of rub it off since it's water-based. So you can do that after every time you do the cards, or I've been able to go through a whole deck and then go back and kind of go through the deck and see if there is like a bleed over, and then I can just kind of rub it away. It's really easy since it's water based. It doesn't stick like the permanent. So the Marks-A-Lot will be a little bit more difficult if you make a mistake, but if you use the chisel tip, it's a little more foolproof. So and I have a deck that's been handled a lot, and this is not antique stained or distressed. This is actually dirty fingers handling this deck. And I was thinking about this, if you have white borders, white back, white borders, you can probably use the antique linen to get the same effect, because it looks very similar, right? You could use the old paper color as well. So there's the antique linen, and then there's the old paper. And so it's kind of interesting to look at something that has been heavily used. So I recommend doing these on white borders or any color. So I don't know how, I've never had like a red bordered deck, but you can use, they have all sorts of colors, the Tim Holtz. So yeah, so if you have any questions, please post. I'm really happy to answer and help. It's really a simple, easy, foolproof thing to do, and it's super fun too. It just kind of adds a little bit more just, I don't know, kind of charm to these old vintage decks that are available to us now. So all right, well, happy edge treating. I hope you guys found this useful, and you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thanks. Bye.